Hi guys, welcome to the channel, or welcome back to the channel, as today I want to bring you the mid-year book Freakout tag, which I hope it's okay. I don't think I'm going to actually freak out. I'm not prone to freaking out, but that's the name of the tag, and so I want to share with you the progress I've made in terms of my reading for the first 6 months of the year. I know a lot of people were putting theirs out at different points throughout June, but I don't know, a little OCD in me. I had to wait till June was completely over to give all the books that I was reading a fair shot. Because yes, I did finish up 2 books here within the past 48 hours or so. Anyway, with that, progress for 2021. So far this year, I have read 48 books. My goal for the year was 50. And that would make the most books that I can remember reading in a single year. I'm already at 48, which is the most I can remember reading in a single year. So with my goal being 50, obviously I can easily read 2 more books this year, and I'm going to have to. I have some classes coming up in October, and there's probably going to be at least 10 books that I'll need to read for those classes. But I'm going to put my goal at 75 to 80 to get to the end of the year, just because with the classes I'll be taking in October, part of my doctoral program, I'm not sure in terms of paper writing and all that, what's going to be involved. So I don't want to set it too high and not be able to make it. So with that, I mean, a lot of friends ask me, how do you read so much? I know this is a common question that gets asked and addressed on channels like this, but for me, it's really about I want to read. I try to watch TV or a movie. Unless it's something I'm really interested in, I would just rather read because the book is always so much better than the movie. And so if I see that there's a movie or a show, but it's based on a book, I'd rather just read the book. For me, that's what I love to do. It's relaxing. And so in the evenings, I will find myself reading. I have a book in the car for when I'm waiting to pick the kids up from work or school. Audiobooks are a great help. And so for me, it's just about enjoying reading. I don't think there's anything magical about reading a lot or not reading a lot. It's if you don't enjoy reading, don't feel guilty about not reading a lot. But for me, I do enjoy it, and I want to read as much as I can. I just want to wish I could just download all the books into my brain and know all the stories. But that's just for me. And a big thing that helps for me is read what you enjoy. One of my goals for this year was to read at least 1 classic every month. And I think I only read 2. I DNF'd one of them. I'll talk about that in a minute, but it's just not my thing. And so I kind of modified that goal and just want to read things that I enjoy. And so with that, I want to answer some of these mid-year book Freakout tag questions. And so here we go. First question, the best book I've read so far in 2021, and for me, that is a pretty easy answer because no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It is Dune by Frank Herbert. Thoroughly enjoyed this. For me, it lives up to all the hype. I can understand those who don't enjoy it or don't appreciate it. It's not an action-packed book. There's a lot of dialogue and political scheming involved in it. But for me, it was right up my alley. And for as much as I love horror, I know that this is a sci-fi book. And amidst all the Stephen King I've read this year so far, this still holds spot number 1 in my heart. So Dune by Frank Herbert, the best book I have read so far this year. The best sequel I have read so far this year. Let me go back to my pile of books here. The best sequel I have read so far this year, and now I get to give a nod to someone I've read a lot of this year. Best sequel of the year so far is Dr. Sleep by Stephen King. This is the sequel to The Shining. This follows the adult Dan Torrance, who was the little boy in The Shining. And I just love his character arc, his development, his own struggles with alcoholism and loving his father, but not wanting to follow in his father's footsteps and facing some of the same pressures and the things that he's willing to do to help this young girl. Abra, I loved it, loved everything about it. I think I think this was the second Stephen King book I read. The first was The Outsider. I think this was the second one that I read this year. So, best sequel of the year so far. I did read Dune Messiah, but this one definitely edged out Dune Messiah. Dr. Sleep by Stephen King, the best sequel I've read so far this year. A new release that I haven't read yet, but I want to, I guess I would probably say If It Bleeds by Stephen King. Don't have that one yet, so I can't show you that, but I definitely want to pick that one up at some point. Another question is anticipated new release in the second half of the year. I don't really know. I haven't really looked at, I know Stephen King is co-authoring a book that's coming out later, but I haven't read other books. It's part of a series of stories with another character. I haven't read any other ones, so I don't think I'll hold off on reading that one. So I don't really know what's coming out the rest of the year. I've got so many older books that I'm trying to catch up on. Again, if you follow this channel, you know that I am so new, giving myself permission to read fiction. And so I've got a lot of fiction from years gone by that I'm trying to catch up on. So not really sure what's going to be coming out. All I know is I've got a lot of stuff backlogged that I would love to finally get to. Biggest disappointment of the year. This one, I think I would have to give to Picture of Dorian Gray. And I know people adore this book. I love the concept of it. The execution for me just was hard. I mentioned earlier I didn't finish it. I got just past halfway, tried audio, tried everything. It just wasn't for me. I was really I love Dracula. That was the first classic I read, and I was hoping because I heard so many great things about The Picture of Dorian Gray that I would love that too. And again, love the concept, but it was just so slow in developing. And I know it's an older book, and I get that, but for me, it just wasn't registering. And I still wrestle. I think I'm going to go back sometime and finish it. Just that unfinished book is really hanging over my head, and I'm struggling with that. So I may end up finishing that off at some point. Biggest surprise of the year. I think I'm going to give this to two different books, a tie for the biggest surprise of the year. Number one, my daughter currently has our copy of it, so I don't have it to show, but The Book Thief. I really didn't know what to expect. I was kind of expecting a really boring read. I'm reading it with her because she has an English class in the fall that she has to read this for, and so I figured I'd read it too, and then we could talk about it and help her as she processes it. And I loved that book. Thoroughly enjoyed The Book Thief. But the other one that I just finished this morning, actually, so I'm technically a July 2nd finish, but I'm going to throw it in here now anyway. That is Elevation by Stephen King. This is just a tiny little book, 142 pages. You could probably read this in one sitting. I think I read it in 2 or 2.5 sittings. Elevation by Stephen King, it gets a lot of hate. A lot of people just weren't into it. I found this to be an absolutely beautiful little parable. It really hooked my heart. It's about a man, very quickly, a man named Scott who stays the same physically, but every day when he steps on the scale, he is losing like 2 pounds every single day. And it just keeps getting lower and lower, but his body's not changing, so there's the mystery of that. But along with that, he has a married lesbian couple who lives next door, and he desperately wants to kind of build a bridge in what's a tense relationship with them. And I only mention that they're a married lesbian couple because, yes, that is crucial to the plot of this story. A beautiful little parable. I'd really encourage you to pick that. There's absolutely nothing scary about it. A beautiful, in some ways, a bittersweet read, but just kind of a feel-good story. So yeah, this was, I was expecting not to like it based on a lot of the negative reviews that I was seeing. And you might say, well, surprise, surprise, I actually liked a Stephen King book. I honestly did. I thoroughly enjoyed Elevation, every bit of it. My favorite new character. Originally, I had Dan Torrance from The Shining and Dr. Sleep, but I think I'm going to go with Scott Carey from Elevation. I love what happens with this character, how he is approaching life, how he's approaching this condition that he has, and the mystery of it. So I think, probably a few characters were in the running for this, but I think Scott Carey from Elevation will take it. Favorite new author? Probably not a surprise, Stephen King. This year was the first time I ever read anything by Stephen King, and I'm at a point now I can't get enough. I've loved everything I've read. I think the lowest rated book I gave him so far was The Outsider, which I loved. The ending seemed a little underwhelming. That's why I gave it 4 stars, but thoroughly enjoyed that book. It's the first book ever that I almost wanted to throw across the room out of frustration at times. But yeah, I've loved everything I've read of Stephen King so far this year. I think I've read 8 or 9 of his books so far this year, but have a shelf and a half now of Stephen King books that I'm eagerly awaiting getting into, including It, which I'll probably read maybe after my class in the fall. After my papers are done around Thanksgiving, I'll probably dive into It. A book that made me cry. For me, that's tough because for me, sobbing is like I get a little watery-eyed. Okay, that's maybe it's just something some inner stuff I need to process. I don't know, but hands down, the book that got me the closest to crying was A Man Called Ove. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. You can go back and watch my review of that book, but absolutely beautiful book. Loved every second about A Man Called Ove by Frederick Bachman. A book that made me happy. There were a lot, but I think I'll give a shout out to a book called Hero of the Fallen by actually a friend of mine, Wes Sherry. This was just a fun fantasy read. I'm not the biggest, even though I love Lord of the Rings, I'm not a huge fantasy guy, but this was just a fun, enjoyable fantasy story. It's called Hero of the Fallen by Wes Sherry. I have a digital copy, that's why I'm not showing you a picture of it, and I don't have the best tech skills to put the little image on there. Sorry. Maybe I'm old. I don't know. The most beautiful book I read, and I interpret this as visually. For me, I just finished this 2 days ago, and I'll probably review it next week, but 11/22/63 by Stephen King. I know it doesn't initially strike you as beautiful, but I can't get enough of this cover. The newspaper clippings, the front dealing with the assassination of JFK, the back cover saying that he survived an assassination attempt. And obviously that's the heart of the book. And I'll get more to it on a review next week. But I just found myself, every time I picked it up, I just stopped and admired the cover. So for me, I don't know if beautiful is the right word, but my favorite cover has been 11/22/63. Let's see, where are we at? 6 books that I want to read by the end of the year. And before I get to that, I did a breakdown so far this year. Again, I said I read 48 books. 22 of those were nonfiction. As I mentioned before, I'm in a doctoral program, so that accounts for a lot of it, but also there's just a lot of nonfiction that I do enjoy. But read 26 fiction books. I don't think I've read 26 fiction books in the past 20 years combined. I've already read that in the first 6 months of this year. So 6 books that I want to read. Actually, I forgot to bring one down. I forgot to bring down It, which I already mentioned. Can't wait to get into It. I'm going to wait until I have I've already got my syllabus for the fall, so I'm starting some of that reading. So probably somewhere November, early December, I'm going to get into It, and I can't wait. From all the hype I've heard, I cannot wait to get into that one. So some other books that I can't wait to get into this year. I am going to yet again try to read The Eye of the World, the first book in the Wheel of Time series. I've already started it, as you can see, but every time I get a couple pages in, I think I'd rather be reading Stephen King, and so I end up going back to a Stephen King. But I do want to discipline myself and get into this and get this series started. I have several books in the series, and I do want to read it. It's just Stephen King keeps calling my name. Anyway, so hopefully I'll get a chance to get around to that. Another book I want to read before the end of this year is The Giver by Lois Lowry. And I've already read this book a few years ago, but I do want to reread it because I'm working on my top 10 favorite books of all time. And this is potentially in that list, and I want to reread it and just to see if it still holds up as much as it did when I read it a couple of years ago. Then another book I want to read is I Am Legend by Richard Matheson. So looking forward to getting into this story at some point. I'll probably get to that before I get to it because that's going to be a much quicker read, obviously. Then the Dark Tower series. First book, The Gunslinger. I definitely want to start the series by the end of the year. Again, this isn't a huge monster by any stretch of the imagination. So this will probably, this and I Am Legend and The Giver, these will be like, I'll take a break from reading one of my course books and knock this out in a day or two and take a little mental break. So I do want to start the Dark Tower series. I have heard so much about that. And lastly, another book that I'm really looking forward to because I thoroughly enjoyed these, I think it was a Netflix series. Pretty sure it was Netflix. But Nosferatu by Joe Hill. I love the two-season television series, so eagerly anxious to get into this. Not a huge one, so again, this will fit in the midst of my coursework fairly easily as well. So that's the sixth book that I'm looking forward to reading this year. So what are your thoughts? Did you read any of those? What did you think? Do you have a mid-year book Freakout tag that you'd like to plug? I'd love to watch yours and see how your reading that has gone so far this year. Whatever you've read, I hope you've enjoyed it. Whatever you plan on reading the rest of the year, I hope you enjoy that too. Read what you love, and yeah, read what you love. Love what you read. Have fun with it. And yeah, look forward to the second half of the year. So thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.